Hello and welcome to today's episode of Her Version. This podcast is dedicated to sharing stories of struggle to triumph, a platform that allows individuals to tell their truth in order to inspire and uplift others. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button, follow, like, and share. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. Let's jump right in. Hello, and thank you for joining us today for this episode of Her Version. The Her Version platform is built on storytelling and the understanding that many times our greatest learning experiences come from listening to other people's stories. Today, I am speaking with an amazing woman named Kathy Jefford. Kathy was born in Appalachian community in 1953 and raised as a Jehovah's Witness. She was denied college because Armageddon was set to arrive in 1975. Instead, she was married and disfellowshipped at 18. 10 years later, she was divorced and left the religion. Since then, she has embraced and searched for answers to the afterlife. She is thrilled to have found resources to help her deprogram her subconscious mind and finally relax into her authentic self. 10 years ago, she attended college and is now certified medical practice executive and certified health information management system specialist. Yes, girl. And author. How are you today?
I'm great.
I love it. Tell us what Appalachian community is. I don't know what that is.
Well, it's actually an area that extends a great distance on the east side of the United States. It's the mountains, the Appalachian Mountains.
The mountains.
And so people tend to think of hillbillies, more West Virginia. And yeah, I have West Virginia relatives. But yeah, the Appalachian Mountains are more rural areas.
Is it have a lot of hillbillies in it?
Pardon?
I said, does it have a lot of hillbillies in it?
Oh, yes. I would proudly say I'm a hillbilly and have many relatives.
We're just getting right to the point. I love it. That's awesome. So East Coast. So I'm on the East Coast. I'm in Florida. At the East Coast.
Did you say you're in Florida?
Yeah. So I'm also on the East Coast.
I'm going to turn my volume up. I'm having trouble here. Sorry. Okay. That's better.
Are you still on the East Coast?
Well, in Ohio. I was raised in Ohio. I'm on the eastern side, southeast in Ohio. I still live in that general area where I was born.
Yes. Oh, I saw that. I saw somewhere that you spent a second of time in Dublin, Ohio.
Well, that was part of my career.
Yes.
And it was actually, I'm retired now. I was 52. I'll be 70 next year. Oh my gosh. So I know.
Yes, girl. Yes,
but I was 52 when I finally finished my bachelor degree. I always wanted to go to college, took a few classes here and there. When I remarried, my husband didn't have his degree either. So we kind of looked at things. He had been in the military, so he had a lot more credits and he could go through it faster. And we were still raising his son, who was only 10. So we were like one at a time. So he went first and got his bachelor's, and then I got mine, and then he went back for a master's. And by then I decided that was enough.
Wow, that is so awesome. Yeah, I actually spent a little bit of time in Dublin, Ohio. That's a cute area.
We're up there. We're at in Dublin.
Oh, I don't remember.
Oh, that's all right.
So long ago.
It's so grown up.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. I visited, or I lived there. I literally less than a year. I was working for the Columbus Dispatch, the newspaper.
Oh, okay, sure.
And that's where I was staying. I was actually staying at an extended stay.
Oh, those are nice.
Like the heart of Dublin. Yeah, it was cute. I like that area. It's fun. Yeah. So I know you've had a story and a journey. So I'm so excited to learn more about all of the stuff, the ups and downs and twists and turns that you've been through. But my first question that I want to ask you to kind of just break the ice is just, what would you say would be the story that changed your entire life, like the pivot that happened in your life, and what did you learn from that story?
Really, I was only not quite 9 years old when a little boy, we were in a small congregation, and a little boy had leukemia, and I was kind of a big brother to him. So, but he died when he was 4 years old. This was 1962. And I'm thinking, Armageddon, he'll be in paradise. Unfortunately, he was an only child, and his parents divorced and stopped being witnesses. And so my father told me he won't be in paradise, that Jehovah won't remember him because he was never baptized. He couldn't be part of the 144,000. His parents weren't faithful to bring him forward. So I was told I could never speak Jimmy's name or his parents' names again. And that really, at a very young age, didn't seem like a loving God to me. And that was, so throughout the book, when I wrote my memoir, I start with that story. Wow. So kind of all through my life, it's what are my beliefs? Because I was questioning. And even though I was disfellowshipped at 18, I got reinstated. Back then, you're supposed to wait a year. That's changed over time.
Yeah.
And I only went back to be with my family.
Yeah.
And I knew, I didn't really believe it, but I had to play a game. Yeah. So it kind of felt like I was two different personalities, or actors maybe.
Yeah.
What you had to act to stay with the family, get to minimal meetings, knock on a few doors. Yeah. But then.
Totally. Yeah. I always say that it kind of reminds me of the game of Monopoly. How like it just keeps going on and on. Yes. And you're like, when is this gonna end? I don't want to play this anymore.
Well, it's relentless. I mean, all those meetings and all that studying and
it was crazy. And then the other thing that was always interesting to me is it didn't matter where I played Monopoly at, like whether it was my house or one of our friends' houses, everyone always had different rules to how they played the Monopoly game.
Yes.
So that was the other thing. It's like, I want to play by my own rules. I don't like these rules. So I always kind of, now looking back, I'm like, it's basically just like the Monopoly game. It just keeps going on and on and on. And everyone's just looking at each other, just like, is this going to end soon? I love it. So wait, so what happened to Jimmy?
Well, he had leukemia at the age of 2 and he died at 4.
Wow.
And my first chapter, I relive being at the funeral. And then after that, as his parents stopped being witnesses and the changes that meant.
Wow.
So very young. But when I started school, you start school, you're supposed to tell everybody about Jehovah. You're supposed to live this life and save all these people. That's a lot to put on a 5-6-year-old. But you did it. I mean, that's what your parents said, and that's what you knew. My blessing, and I have a big blessing, while my mother was a witness, none of her family was. Wow. So on the rare occasions we got to visit her family, particularly her brothers and sisters, she was one of 8. I saw what real love was. I saw something very different in how they interacted as parents and children, just so much more relaxed and caring. And Mom's family has a pretty big family reunion, and that was my favorite event. And while Dad wanted to keep us away from them, once in a while, Mom put her foot down, and that was one of the times.
Wow. Yeah. Did you guys, was it like a one-day event and everyone gets together and plays cornhole, or what'd you guys do?
Yeah, it was usually a Sunday. Well, it's always a Sunday, big meal at lunch, and then games and stories and auction and catching up. And yeah, it was a great.
That's so cool.
And we missed the meeting on Sunday.
Yes. Yes.
An extra plus.
So when did you sit down and write the book?
Well, it retired 4.5 years ago, and I published it a year ago, October. So all throughout, I never was good at keeping a diary. And when I tried my first one, Mom read it, so I gave that up. So, but as an adult, when I'd go on vacation, I'd pick up a notebook and, I had a little more time to think. My sons were 2 and 4 when their father left. We were married 10 years. I waited till 1977 to have my first child. I was married in 1971. But he left and I raised my 2 sons alone. So you know how hectic that is. And I would write in these notebooks, just sometimes a few pages, but I always got a new one. So when I decided I wanted to write a memoir, I just wrote an outline of 21 chapters. And then I kind of grabbed some notebooks because I've forgotten so many things. Some I wish I didn't remember, but some were fun to remember.
Yes, yes.
And that just is how I put it together.
That's awesome. Very awesome. Throughout this time, I know that you have stated, you've done a lot of learnings and you dove into, some sort of personal development. How has that journey been for you? When did all that happen?
Well, where I lived in an even more rural, remote area when I was married and had my sons. And so there wasn't really opportunities. And this is back in the late 70s. When about 5-6 years after the divorce, I moved to Columbus. And I felt like a teenager going to college. I'm bringing my 2 sons with me. They're 8 and 10.
Oh.
But I just felt this freedom, running this little 2-bedroom upstairs apartment, and just felt absolutely free to be myself because in-laws lived half a mile down the road. I had brothers and sisters, actually literally flesh and blood brothers and sisters besides the others, always watching me. So it was my first experience to just say, okay, I'm ready.
Yeah.
And took me 3 tries to find a psychologist and kind of gave her a brief history. And she said, you need deprogrammed. And so I saw her every week for a year.
Uh-huh.
And, just then she sporadically, and she had me in a group with a couple other women, not witnesses, just women with other issues.
Yeah.
We'd all, or divorce or single moms or whatever. And that's where I really got started. But I was always reading. I was just always hungry to read and learn new things.
Yeah. How was that experience for you as far as diving into that? I know for me, I was like scared because even though I had left, I was still like,
oh yeah, you get that little thing in the news. Well, maybe Armageddon's coming. But I think because
so how was that for you?
Well, because I'd made it through 75. And I really didn't believe this was the truth. But yeah, it's hard not to occasionally get a trigger of, that, oh, there's an increase in the bird population. Oh yeah, they got to eat all the dead bodies at Armageddon, there's a war. There's, they would just project on anything in the news. That means Armageddon's coming. Yeah. And so it was more, what do I believe? It's more trusting myself. And eventually her name was Laura, my first psychologist. And then I made a few new friends in Columbus. And one of them gave me one of Dr. Laura Schlesinger's books. And then I got addicted to those. And when I could listen to her on the radio, and she helped me a great deal. I said, wow, if I had known the 10 stupid things women do to mess up their lives when I was, 16, my life would have been very different. Because even just so many basic moral, just things that we should have known, we didn't. Yeah. We just knew don't do this, don't do that, do this, do that. Yeah. And so I felt like a robot, I didn't feel like an identity, an individual. My mom, she died 10 years ago, but in her probably late 70s, she said, and I was one of 5 children. She said, I wish I saw each of my children differently, saw them individually.
Oh, as opposed to what? What did she mean by that?
Because we were just, I felt like I was a cog in the wheel. We were just expected to read all these things, go to all these meetings, knock on doors. There was no discussion of our talents. There was no sports, no music. This was just our life. And then it was a shame because, I wish I had the opportunity to learn to play some instrument, to, participate in some other activities because, and it was a very small, we just really didn't even have friends.
Yeah.
And so we were just, you did these things and you didn't do these things.
Yeah.
So it was, and different personalities, obviously, but not so much appreciated. My father was extreme. He didn't like crying. He didn't like bursts of laughter. He didn't like any high emotions. So always felt kind of like controlled, keep everything. And I can be very extroverted. So it was hard, but you knew the guidelines and you knew the punishment if you strayed.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I still remember being young and being inquisitive or curious and just asking questions or questioning things or even just asking like their own opinion. Like, do you really think? Really?
Oh, you apostate, you.
Yeah, and it would get me in trouble. Yeah, they'd shut it down real fast. And I learned at a very, like we all do at a very young age, just not ask questions.
Yeah.
But what happens with that, and I wish that they would know that, but that is why I like kept looking.
Right.
Because it's like how you're supposed to question everything.
Yes.
Like everything that you do, investments that you make, restaurants that you go to, like what's the first thing you do? You look at the reviews,
right?
Goods and bads. You don't just like go in blindly to places or, like even when you're buying like a toaster oven, what do? You don't just buy a toaster oven because it says 5 stars. You like read the stuff and make sure and do your own research and do comparisons. But then the biggest thing that's controlling our entire lives, we don't do any like back research on it at all. So strange to me. Like I was thinking this like at a very, teenage years of like, why can I not ask a question?
Yeah. My father would get very angry with me because I didn't answer him. And his fallback was, he would say, man can't know Jehovah. He's so wonderful, right? And of course, forget man, I'm a woman. I mean, I can't know anything. So where do I come up with these questions? So, one of the heartbreaks, I don't know how it was for you, but the day I was disfellowshipped, I was married at the time, and my father went home and told my mom and siblings never to speak my name again.
Yeah.
And even though I got reinstated the next year, I was never again trusted. So as my siblings had children, they were never allowed at my house alone to visit. That broke my heart because I love children. And that's what I really want to see change.
Yeah.
In the organization is what's happening to young children, what we're taught, the horrors of their teachings. Just, it's terrible.
Yeah. I want to ask you because, people listening, people that are drawn to listen to this podcast are obviously going to be people who are Jehovah's Witnesses, who are thinking about stepping out or who have just stepped out. And there's, if you can think back, which I remember just the nerves and the uncertainty and the fear. What would you say from your personal experience? What were some of the first steps that you took to set your own foundation of goodness for you? What were some of the things that you did?
I would say one of the best things was when I was 17, I started working in a hospital, and I worked in the pharmacy department. So I'm with a whole different mindset of people, very inquisitive, asking lots of questions. Didn't really tell them, about witness things, but just curious. And throughout my career, as I, worked in different offices and you get to know people, I would just ask a lot of questions about their churches or their beliefs, or, to try to understand that. When I finally moved to Columbus, one of the first things besides getting a psychologist, and Crisis of Conscience, the book came out, I think 2 years after I left, somewhere around there, 2 years before or after. I was able to get a copy of that. That certainly reinforced my doubts and knew that wasn't what I believed. I also began visiting churches. Some other, you meet moms with your kids, and one mom invited me to one church and this dad invites me to another. And I'm like, okay, bring them on. I visited about any kind of church I could. One of my favorite things is when I was going to college, it was a Catholic university. And we were required to take religion classes. Well, hell, that's the only thing I wanted to take. I had already been in the business of medicine. I'd already become an executive and was a COO of a large merger of some groups, and then became a consultant. So I had my career pretty good, but I just wanted that degree, and wished I had, when I was 22, not 52. However, those classes about religion, about the Bible, were the most enlightening. And one of our assignments was to visit some obscure church, and we had to do a paper. And I picked a Buddhist temple. I mean, we could go anywhere.
Wow.
But so the year I moved to Colorado, I, visited churches there. Went to a Native American service, went to, Sunday at the rodeo at the church service. I mean, I just search and ask questions.
Absolutely. I do. I think that is great advice as far as continuing to stay curious about all the things. And it's vast, the amount of information. I think one of the biggest turning points for me, because I did that too. I went to so many churches, big churches, mega churches, non-denominational churches, religious, Baptists. One of the biggest turning points for me was at a mega church. So one of those huge ones with like stadium seating, was a pastor whose daughter had gone outside the religion and had now come back. And she was giving a testimony. And the amount of emotion that came up in me as an ex-JW was the exact same emotion at this random church that don't belong to, the same exact emotion that would be elicited in my body at a convention of a similar story. Because that's just what it is. It's just a very heartfelt story.
Yes.
But it's to two different gods.
Right.
So in my head, I'm like, it was a huge turning point for me. Of like,
interesting.
Holy shit, the passion is the same in both. These people believe just as strongly as some of these witnesses do on this other end. So like, who's right? Because it's the same. Like, it hit me I started to cry, just like I had cried at a couple conventions throughout my life of just very heartfelt stories that were shown. But that really got me questioning religion in general, like religious, entities in general, as far as like, wow, they're all pulling at heartstrings. Everyone here believes this, but then I go here and everyone here believes this, like the same, with the same amount of emotion.
Yeah, I miss the community. I mean, that's the tough part, is when we lose all of our community.
Yeah.
I faded after the divorce.
Yeah.
Was surprised I wasn't disfellowshipped as an apostate, but I just faded and moved away, and they just ignored me, which is great.
Yeah.
But yeah, losing community was difficult. I did, when you mentioned a mega church. So a few years after I'd been in Columbus, one of my friends heard about Dr. Phil's personal growth seminars. Now, this is way before Oprah, quite a ways before Oprah. And he would have these weekend retreats. He'd have 100 people, and we would go down to Wichita Falls, Texas for a weekend. And they were just amazing experiences. You were high, happy, and then you crashed, you cried, and you shared stories. And, it wasn't a JW thing. I might probably was the only JW there even. But, and then the next couple weekends when I went down, it was in Dallas. So we went to a mega church. Holy cow.
Did you go to Joel Osteen's?
I don't remember. That was like in the 80s. All I remember is just, I'm like you. My mouth is open. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, one of the biggest churches in the country is in Texas. Yeah, I bet you that's the one you went to.
So, I was kind of oblivious to a lot, except that, wow, you're right. All these people embrace this. They love this. And a few years after that, I don't know if have you heard of an Emmaus walk? It's kind of a Christian thing. A lot of the churches do it, I would say, to get new members. But it's a weekend retreat for women. So women in the congregation care for us. They had it in like the basement of a small church in Columbus. But we're cared for, we're loved, we're fed. It was a beautiful experience. And at the last time together, they took us into the church chapel, and we gave testimonies if we felt like it. And I didn't think I was going to do anything. And like, I stood up and I was just overwhelmed, and I cried because I felt loved. But but then it got ruined, because at the end of it, two of the pastors, or whatever they were, came up to me and said, now you need to join a church. You have to join a church. And I felt that pressure like the elders when I was in front of them, and I couldn't get away fast enough. Yeah. So, for a brief second, I thought, I do want to find a loving community. But no, I'm not going to do it under those circumstances of being told, as we were as women, not just witnesses, as women, what to do. So if anything, wow. No, I remember the good feeling and appreciation. But I also question the Bible. I don't personally believe it's the word of God. And in studying a lot of different, as you say, I've looked at Hindus and Muslims and the Jewish faith. I've just studied so many of them. Who knows? And one of the catalysts at the end of my book is talking about finding Jimmy, and it's about the afterlife. So I took about 6 major religions and said, what would they say happened to Jimmy when he died?
Wow.
And they were so kind and loving, all of them. So I'll take all of them.
Wow. That's powerful.
It was sincerely powerful. I didn't do that piece until I was writing the book.
Yeah.
And I wanted to really dig in. Okay, well, I know Catholics are very loving, and, all of God's children go to heaven, and the angels, and it's all beautiful. Yeah. But I didn't know about all the other faiths. But some of these ones that people, hate or don't understand, they all were loving to Jimmy.
Wow. Wow, that's great. What would you say is the number one lesson that you've learned about life?
As hard as it is, I have to trust my instincts. I really, I've learned to be strong. You have to be raising 2 sons. And, not just emotionally, but financially in every way, supporting them. But I made a lot of mistakes along the way. I dated the wrong guys for quite a few years, and should have known better. I mean, I wish, but we kind of just know what we know.
Yeah.
And it took me quite a while to figure out when something doesn't feel right, say no.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
What would you wish for?
Wow. Besides the watch our society failing, no, I would wish that the children are treated differently. Not just witnesses, but really in any of these religions that are telling these horrific tales to children. I mean, the Paradise book was scary, the pictures of everything. And they're not the only religion that do that to children.
Yeah.
But particularly with the witnesses, the child sexual abuse that fortunately is coming out all over the world now.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to see that. So I would just wish that children quit being harmed, let them be innocent, give them some good morals and guidelines, but just give them unconditional love, which my father told me. I asked him about it. I was young, maybe early teens, about unconditional love. And he said, no, I would never have that unless I was doing all the things expected of me as a witness.
Yeah.
So,
it is going to be interesting when there's more light that's shown on the molestation within the witnesses.
Yes.
Because they don't know, because they're told to not watch any of that stuff,
right,
because it's propaganda. So, or that's what they're told.
Right.
So, like, that was huge for me when I dove into that arena of it, of like, holy crap, I had no idea that so much stuff is being hidden.
I think there's pedophiles in just, if not every, and almost every congregation. And the thankfully, the Australian Royal Commission, 4 or 5 years ago, started studying, and they're still researching and doing things.
Yeah.
They're still finding cases, and now other countries are stepping up. And the United States, but it's kind of state by state in the United States how far you can go back, and they're changing laws so that even somebody my age that was abused could file something.
Yeah,
depending on the laws.
Yeah. I was reading somewhere, or actually I think I saw it in some sort of documentary about like tens of thousands of dollars a day being given to the court system because they're refusing to hand over the documentation that shows the thousands of known pedophiles that are actually baptized Jehovah's Witnesses that are just hidden within these congregations.
Yes.
So like those donations that Jehovah's Witnesses are giving unknowingly is going towards their own children getting raped.
Yes. Covering up stories. Just like, we did quick builds. There was quick builds going on a lot as I grew up.
Yeah.
And you donated your time, your energy, your gas, your food, they expected everything.
Yeah.
People donated land, building supplies, and now they're selling them off. And they're just such an evil cult. People think they're friendly. One of my experiences was after I wrote the book, I had a friend in Columbus invite me. I don't know if you remember where Grandview was, but it's kind of another burb not too far from Dublin. But she invited me to her. I met her through my career, and she had a book club of ladies her age, and they'd been in this 20, 25 years, and they were all well-educated teachers, executives. So they read my book and they invited me, and it was grueling. It was a good grueling because they had no idea. And but there was actually an elementary teacher there who said, "But I have 2 witnesses in my class, and they are the best students. They do what you ask them right away." And I said, "Well, that's kind of beat into them.
Yeah.
You have to sit for 2 hours in 2 meetings a week, and an hour in another one, at least back then." And you're expected to act a certain way and do a certain thing.
Yeah.
So,
Like little trained puppies.
yes.
100%. Do you have the book by any chance? Can you show us the book?
Oh, I would love to. Yes. Here's the
Yes.
story of the book. Let's see. There we go.
Oh, I
Where's
love
Jimmy?
it.
Oops, there we go. Looking back. So this is an actual real art. I worked with a nurse, and I moved to Colorado in 1998 after my younger son was 18. And I had worked for this medical practice for 11 years. And they had a going away party for me because that was my carrot at the end of the stick, was moving to Colorado.
Yeah.
And that was when you said it's never too late. When you did my intro, I said, oh, that's clever, because that's what I always wanted to do.
Yeah.
So anyway, Jan gave me this. And so it's kind of a little boy that's looking, he's got a hat on, and you kind of see in the clouds some cowboys. And so it's kind of vague, but
Yeah.
to me, it spoke to me about Jimmy.
I
And
love it.
that he's kind of looking down. He's a little bit hidden. You don't really see his face. But yeah, so that's how I came up with the cover on it.
Fantastic. Yeah, to me, when I was reading, through your stuff, that's just really what spoke to me as far as it's never too late, because so many times in our lives, I feel we have missed opportunities and we blame it. We're like, oh, I could have but this, or I should have but this. And your story really speaks to all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But then you just went ahead and decided to do some of that stuff anyways. Like going back to college at 52, like people just don't do that. They complain about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just don't do it. And I just think that that's such a testament to who you are as a person and your ability to be able to say like, hey, yeah, that's my story, but it's not going to stop me from what my dream ultimately was. And I just think that that's just so powerful.
Yeah, I would just tell everybody, when I look at your business, everything that you do, I mean, wow, you raised the bar high, and your dream was way up in the clouds. I mean, it was huge, and you've succeeded. And I am proud of myself that I've made it through all the things that I made it through. Disfellowshipping's horrible. Divorce is horrible. I had a tumor at one point. I've had a miscarriage. I was divorced almost 20 years before I ever remarried. And that took a lot to trust. My trust in men was pretty bad. And so that was one of the biggest leaps, was saying, okay, I knew this guy, I'd known him 10 years. We hadn't dated until toward the end of those years, but he was very intelligent. He had a lot of integrity. And I knew this is what I needed. So I made that leap. And it wasn't easy, because I'd been pretty independent for 20 years and didn't answer to anybody. Well, you got to tell me when you're going to be home or what you're going to do. And I'm like, really?
Yeah.
And he'd been divorced 10. So, it was a journey. It was an adventure to figure out what's our relationship. And we've been married 22 years now, so it seems to be working pretty well.
Yes. How old is your son now?
My oldest son is 45, and my other son's 43 from my first marriage. And my bonus son, I call him, he was 10. Oh my God. So he's 33.
Wow.
And the joy, which I'm sure you'll have in the future, is being a grandmother.
Yes.
Wow. And so my son.
So then there's all the grandkids.
Where's that? Oh, yes. So my sons weren't raised as witnesses. And so none of my grandkids are witnesses. Yeah. And just looking at how the world's open to them, and learning and growing, and it's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. I have so much. I am very grateful that I pulled out when I did, as far as my son, because I look at him now, and our relationship, we're just so close.
Mm-hmm.
because there's no need for like all this tippy-toeing around or secrets or anything. I mean,
No.
he could tell me anything. There's like, and there's zero judgment on
Right.
anything. And he knows that. He fully 100% trusts. He can tell me
Mm-hmm.
literally anything. And he has
Yeah.
told me some very interesting things. And I'm just there.
Right.
I'm just there
Right.
for him. There's
That
no
judgment
fear.
word is so huge, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean,
there's
we were
no
just
fear.
judged all the time.
Yeah,
All those eyes looking at us.
yeah,
And for all my growing up years, our neighbors were witnesses. At one point, we lived outside Zanesville in a rural, on a hill. Every family around us were witnesses. You know, so this was back in the 50s and early 60s when, you know, they were talking about building shelters and, you know, Armageddon's coming. And so you had these people. I mean, there were maybe 8 families. It wasn't like 1,000 people, but, you know, 8 families that are watching everything you do
yeah.
and judging you and telling on you. Lots of tattletaling, we called it.
That's just so interesting to me. It's like 70 more years has gone by. And like,
Yeah.
I just don't get it.
No.
Like, I'm so confused as to like
That's
how
sin.
are there people that aren't questioning? How do you not wonder? I don't know.
I did join quite a few Facebook groups after I published my book. It was my son's suggestion for marketing.
Yeah,
And so I'd been away from it for all these years. And I just told my story.
yeah,
But I got on these Facebook groups just this year. And it is shocking. And I'm so encouraged when somebody new joins that's my age, that's
yeah,
leaving now, because I could talk some sense into my mom, but I knew she'd never leave.
yeah,
And Dad and I had, you know, zero conversation about any of that. But it's just so exciting to me when anybody's leaving. Now it's, you know, when you're a teenager and a young adult, it's a rough road because of losing family and
yeah,
friends that you thought were friends and making
yeah,
your way without the skills we need to exist in the world.
yeah, definitely. Um, I want to give a quick shout out to those watching live. Thank you so
Mhm.
much for being here, for hanging out with us, listening to Kathy's story. For those of you watching on the replay, make sure you hashtag replay so that we know where you are watching us at and we can send you some love. But I want to ask, Kathy, where can people buy your book? Where can people
Oh,
follow you?
it's on Amazon. I have the hardcover, and of course, I'm on Kindle. There's an ebook for it, and I've
Beautiful.
kept it on unlimited Kindle free since I published. So I hope that helps people to be able to read it or get it. It's in some libraries. I've been pretty good at reaching out to libraries. Um, I think it's on Goodreads. It's in a couple different places. I haven't started a website. I've just been kind of on the fence about that. But I'm on Twitter and I'm on Facebook. Kathy Jefford. You know, where's Jimmy is usually what you can type in to find me. So
I
I
love
love to
it.
hear from people. Um, I'm just struggling with learning all these media sites to communicate and do all
Yeah,
those things.
yeah, for sure.
But I love it when, you know, I can comment or encourage, or sometimes I kind of kick somebody in the butt a little bit that
Yeah,
I think kind of needs it. Love you, but
yeah. What's your big dream for your book?
I just wanted to speak to people about what's really going on. And so the groups that the book clubs or the, you know, the places that I've been to present it are shocked because, you know, they just think we're just another Christian religion. So we're not going to church on Sunday. That's what leaving means. But to get into the inner working. So it's really to expose more information, particularly with women, not just children, but as women.
Yeah,
Um, and I hope it helps. I've gotten some good reviews and people that said, yeah, as they left, they wish they had that to read because here I've survived and made a life and alone, but a good life.
yeah,
And so there's so much you can do. With some of these new people, when they leave, it's like, oh, I have all this new free time, right? Don't have to study, don't have to go to all these meetings, can sleep in. And one person, I just looked at all the emojis that was about sports, or anything, any kind of activities, and said, the world's open.
Yeah.
Start finding things that you want to do, because even though I tried skiing at 40, oh my God.
And you're still here to tell the tale.
I'm still walking around. But yeah, did some baseball. I mean, whitewater rafting, back in my younger days, or, 30s and 40s, when I was out, I tried a lot of things that I didn't think I'd get to do.
Yeah. I was just talking to another ex-JW who lives in Costa Rica yesterday. She's actually become one of my very good friends. I met her in the Empowered group. I don't know if you're part of that ex-JW Empowered group.
Oh, yes, Empowered. Yes, I'm on there. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I met her through there. She joined Her Nation, my community. And we've become really close. I've never met her before in real life, but we're like literally such good friends. But I was talking to her yesterday about that, as far as like we're given a second chance.
Mm-hmm.
We're given a second chance, and you don't want to waste it. No. You don't want to waste it just like sitting around just watching TV. That's what you did when you were a Jehovah's Witness.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that's what your time is. You're just you study, you go to meetings, you watch TV. You don't really do much of anything else. Mm-hmm. So that's what we were talking about, is just the importance of living big, and living big, not just for us, but also living big for an example. It's almost like an obligation.
It is.
We almost have a duty to show that, listen, like there's so much more than that.
Yeah. I talked in the book too about suicide, the thoughts of suicide, and the suicides with a lot of our young folks, and the help that we need for that. And I had some pretty low spots. And when you're alone, it's really difficult.
Yep.
And so you have to find friends and community and activities, and you have to drag yourself out and, face the world and live. And certainly having children help that, because that's how I skied. They had ski club at their school. So I went as a parent and was able to do that. But there are so many things in the world that we missed.
Yeah.
And certainly missed in my younger days that I can't quite do now, but
sure.
So people need to, you'll get, people eventually, hopefully they're going to be 70 and 80 and 90 and 100 the way things are going.
Yeah.
And there's just not enough time to do and read everything. And
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I absolutely love that you've written a book. I love that you are comfortable talking about your story, being open about it, because we need more people like you who understand the importance of sharing that, because these are the words that are the catalyst for helping other people step out, is knowing that there's other women out there that are normal, just like you and I, just normal women who are just like questioning it and just don't agree, and just took a leap of faith, swallowed our fear, and all the criticism that could possibly come with it, because that's a thing. And now we're living our best life, and we're doing things.
Yes.
I
don't want to be Jehovah's chosen one. I'm going to be a regular woman that's living her life. And
100. Yeah. So I so appreciate you. I love the book. For those of you listening live, if you resonated with all the goodness that Kathy shared today, make sure you check out her book. It's on Amazon. Where's Jimmy? She's predominantly on Facebook and Twitter under Kathy Jefford. So Google her up, find her, follow her, reach out to her. The Her Nation is all about building community. That's what we do here, is that community, Kathy, that you and I had left behind, is what I am now trying to build outside of that. Is a real community filled with real people who are supportive of each other despite their beliefs, despite their wrongdoings, despite any sins, quote unquote, that they're doing. and just to accept you as you are, which is just a human.
It is.
And we deserve to have a community too. And that's what
Yes,
I
we do.
am dedicated to doing here with people just like you. So I so appreciate you. Any closing thoughts before we wrap up?
Well, this will be a funny one, sort of.
Okay.
So I would say for all you women in your 30s and 40s, when you're feeling really good, hormones are really good, go get them tested so you know what all your hormone levels are. When I got into my 40s, I went into a severe depression. And my psychologist that I had been seeing when I moved to Columbus said, it's because my sons were teenagers. And so we processed things I hadn't processed from my teen years, But at the same point, I'm in perimenopause and I'm having migraines and I'm having horrible periods, which I'd never had. And because my mother and my sister had breast cancer, nobody wanted to give me hormones, and I couldn't think clearly, and I'm miserable, and I just had, and so it took years and to finally level my hormones, which I still take. I take estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. I've taken them now for 20 some years. So I'm just telling you young ladies, I would get your hormone levels checked while you're feeling good, because they can do bioidentical hormones for you to match.
Ooh, good advice.
It's one of the biggest things I learned. I actually found a doctor in Cincinnati, MD, OBGYN, who on the side did a lot of natural. She traveled the world. She looked at herbs and, all these vitamins and supplements and everything. And she tried me on all the natural stuff, and I just wasn't responding. So she started prescribing estrogen patches and then kept increasing them until I'm like, wow, I get it. I feel good now. So it's a complete aside, but it's one of the lessons that I don't think anybody talks about.
No, yeah, I've definitely never heard of that at all.
Because the doctors aren't pushing that, and you probably have to pay for it because insurance isn't going to cover it. I was paying out of pocket, to do things back. But it's worth it, so that when you get to a point where you're losing those hormones, you kind of can say, this is where I need to be.
Yes. Great advice.
Throw it out.
Absolutely great advice. Thank you. Great closing thoughts for all of us.
That's a good one. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you for being here. Thank you for those of you that were watching live today. Thank you for those of you who were watching on the replay right now. We appreciate you being here and taking it all the way to the end with Kathy and I. This is the Her Version podcast, and this community is expanding every single day, and it's filled with females who are striving to do better than they did yesterday. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you follow, like, and share. This podcast is all dedicated to storytelling. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria, and I'm so grateful to be here sharing a platform that allows people to share their truth and inspire